In June this past summer, after the agreement for my service as interim lead pastor was arranged, the executive officers of our congregation asked me to draft a plan for our work together during this interim period. Nowhere in that plan did I mention even once the word COVID. And yet, the continuing COVID pandemic has been a prominent factor affecting our ministry together since I began. The most troublesome issues of COVID's effect on our congregational life concern the questions of whether and when and how we might safely gather inside this sanctuary for worship. Our congregation is far from consensus regarding those questions. I doubt we will ever reach uniformity of opinion about how best to proceed. And yet, we are called to be of one mind as a congregation. And that one mind is the mind of Christ. Being of one mind does not mean being of one opinion. Instead, it means being of one intention, to care for and to care about one another as best we can under the counsel of the Holy Spirit. In his first letter to the church in Corinth, the Apostle Paul teaches about the meaning of Christian care for others. The 10th chapter of 1 Corinthians explains that a fundamental principle of Christian ethics prioritizes responsibility toward others over the rights we might claim for ourselves. Do not seek your own advantage, Paul teaches us, but that of the other. Later, in the 12th chapter of 1 Corinthians, Paul returns to the same point when he describes the responsibility of all members of the body to care for each member of the body. The intention that guides the Christian community, says Paul, is that there may be no dissension within the body, but that members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together, says Paul. Together, we will continue to bear the responsibility to care well for one another, including the responsibility to care for the health and safety of our congregational members and our congregational neighbors in this hard and wearying time of the COVID pandemic. We will act upon the best wisdom we can discern as we assess our policies and protocols related to gatherings inside this sanctuary and all other spaces on our church campus. While we do that, I ask that all people of our congregation practice the spiritual virtues associated with the premier virtue of love. In the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians, Paul writes, "Love is patient, love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. Love does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoings, but rejoices in the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things."